can this one man convince an entire population of people that they are specific races that deserve to be erased off the face of this planet, and they will help him commit genocide in order to achieve that goal? How exactly did Hitler use psychology and propaganda to manipulate and control the German citizens to do his will throughout World War II? Now, before I ever discuss psychology, I must always reference a Spider-Man quote: "With great powers come great responsibility." The information that you're about to learn here today about how Hitler used propaganda and psychology is not for you now to go out there and manipulate other people. It is strictly for you to get a clear understanding and how not to get manipulated in the future by the power of propaganda and psychology. So once again, this is for you to use in an ethical way, not in a malicious, intentional way. You're trusted with this information now. So with that being said, let's now discuss how the hell did Hitler get this entire population to commit one of the greatest atrocities in human history. Even though Hitler was not the first to use propaganda on a large scale, him and the Nazi regime damn near perfected it, getting it to unprecedented levels of effectiveness. But for the people out there that are saying, what the hell is propaganda? Propaganda is any form of communication that's designed to manipulate or influence a large group of people's beliefs, emotions, and their actions. Often being used by governments and organizations to spread certain narratives and ideology to manipulate the public, us, our opinion, so they can control how we see the world. But Hitler didn't want to just spread any narrative. He wanted to spread a narrative that would convince people to follow his lead to commit atrocities. Now, here are the 5 steps Hitler used to achieve his master plan. Step 1, Hitler needed someone that was in the field of propaganda. If you don't know who this man is right here, you are missing a huge part of history. Hitler put this man in charge of running the Nazi propaganda. And this man's name is Joseph Goebbels. Joseph was a master manipulator, and he is the main reason for perfecting propaganda with his techniques. He perfected it so well, y'all, that the leaders in the future, the leaders to this day, has studied, analyzed, and are using his techniques. He knew with the power of propaganda, it would turn ordinary citizens into loyal followers of the Nazis. His biggest strategy was so simple, but yet it was so effective. And that strategy was repetition. You see, Goebbels, he understood that if you could repeat something to someone over and over and over and over and over, they would eventually believe it, no matter how outrageous it was. He had a saying that goes, if you could tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will start to believe it. So go tell this big lie on newspapers, tell it on radio, film, posters, continuously spread Nazi ideology throughout all media forms. Mr. Goebbels would take these complex political and social issues and make them into easy, understandable slogans like this right here. I ain't German. I don't know how to say this shit. But in English, it means one people, one empire, one leader. It's simple, it's catchy, and it was designed to create a sense of unity and loyalty to that big-ass mustache-wearing mofo Hitler. Now, can you think of a time, I don't know, in 2020 where they were using these catchy phrases, repeating them over and over, giving us this big lie until eventually we believed it? Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one. So Goebbels also used emotional appeal, which is another persuasive technique to sway an audience by connecting with their emotions, by using language and imagery in order to get them in their feelings. So whether that's getting them happy, sad, fearful, angry, instead of swaying them with logic, they rather sway you through your emotions. Governments would rarely try to sell you on logic. They will always sell you on emotions. So when it came to the Nazis, they wanted to inspire fear, hatred, and pride within their people. Now, step 2 to the master plan, the power of visual propaganda. Hitler knew that humans are highly visual creatures, and imagery is a powerful tool to shape the public's opinion. So the Nazis had to use posters, they had to use films and symbolisms to build a consistent and persuasive narrative. The swastika, for example, it wasn't just a symbol. It was an emblem of Nazi vision, of power, unity, Aryan superiority. But I just wanted to mention that they stole that symbol from Africa, which meant peace, but that's a different topic. Now, the symbol was everywhere, from soldiers' uniform to the architecture of German cities. Every time you as a citizen is seeing the emblem, it's constantly reinforcing the idea of Nazi dominance in your head. Now, one of the most infamous propaganda Nazi film that came out in 1935 was called Triumph of the Will. Oh, and this film was a masterclass for manipulating, giving you a plethora of visual images to glorify Hitler and his Nazi party. It showcased Hitler as being this powerful, godlike figure while depicting the German people as loyal to him and united under his leadership. So this film was definitely being used to create an emotional and almost a damn near like spiritual connection with the Nazi cause. Now, I'm gonna say something that a lot of y'all are not gonna like, but Mr. Joseph Goebbels was a genius. Obviously, I don't agree with what he did, but he was a genius at making all of this seem like a cultural movement, getting all the filmmakers involved, the writers, the artists to spread this ideology. Now, I go back to 2020. Do you remember all the artists getting involved in that ideology? Remember Juvenile? Girl, who's you playing with? That thing up.
Girl, you look good, want you vax that thing up. You's a handsome young brother, want you vax that thing up. Dating real life, you need to vax that thing up. Feeling freaky all night, you need to vax that thing up. Girl, you look good, want you vax that thing up. You's a handsome young brother, want you vax that thing up. Dating real life, you need to vax that thing up. Feeling freaky all night, you need to vax that thing up.
I'm sorry, back to the regular program. Now, step 3 of the master plan, get hold of the radio, reach the masses, especially the working class. They broadcasted Hitler's speeches to millions, repeating these ideas, which was the key to ingraining them into people's minds. So if you were not fortunate enough to even have access to any forms of media, Hitler made sure you still was gonna hear his voice. But he also made sure you was gonna hear Nazi-approved programming, which glorified the regime, demonized enemies, and spread anti-Semitic views. So by controlling the radio airwaves, Hitler was able to ensure that only his message and his narrative he wanted to create reached the people. Step 4 to the master plan, create the enemy. Now that Hitler has successfully controlled the media, now that he has successfully spread the ideology of Nazism and formed unity, it is time now for Hitler to get what he truly wanted. And that is to create an enemy for the people to rise and unite against. This is where the intensifying of anti-Semitic rhetoric comes into play. The Nazis painted the Jews as the root cause of Germany's problems. They blamed the Jews for Germany losing in World War I by manipulating the economy and causing the financial collapse with hyperinflation. And they were working with the secret societies to bring Germany down to their knees, having them sign that embarrassing Treaty of Versailles, which was harsh reparations, which caused Germany to lose a lot of their territory. Now, by spilling this narrative to the people over and over and over, all it did was fuel anger and resentment towards the Jews, despite there being conclusive evidence to back up that claim. Jewish people were not the only labeled enemies by Hitler. Yes, Jewish people took the brunt of it, but Hitler also named enemies to be black people in Germany, Polish people, Slavic people, anybody who was disabled, Romanians, all of them needed to go, said Hitler. So by vilifying these so-called enemies, Hitler was able to justify extreme measures such as persecution of all of these people. They created this us versus them mentality by dehumanizing these groups, the so-called enemies, which made it easier now for the people to accept and even participate in the violence. Now, do you remember the rhetoric when there was the anti-ers and the non-essential workers and the essential workers? Now, I know that's not extreme as the Holocaust, but you get the point. Now, the last step, step 5 to the master plan, keep repeating the lie until it's the truth. Remember what we said earlier. If you tell a lie big enough and you keep repeating it, eventually people will believe it. And when they believe it, it becomes their reality and they accept it. They no longer question it. Now, even though you know all the 5 steps now, you still have a serious question after all of this, and so did I. And that is, there had to have been certain people that no matter how good that propaganda was, they still didn't want to do the shit. So then what the hell made them do the shit? Now, during the Nuremberg trials, the testimonies of the ones who committed these acts, there were a few things, but I'll only give you 5 that they said made them do it. Number 1, peer pressure. The soldiers and the civilians said they feared ostracization or being labeled weak or disloyal by their peers. Step 2, the propaganda and indoctrination. They said that the Nazis' propaganda did a good job at dehumanizing these particular groups and making them feel like these groups were a threat to their own survival, so it made it easier for them to accept the atrocities and even participate in them. Number 3, incremental commitment. They said the Nazis first had them do small tasks that were non-lethal, and then they gradually escalated to atrocities. It's similar to what Charlie Manson did when he was getting vulnerable people and having them do small little crimes like stealing, and then eventually getting them to commit murder for him. If you want me to discuss Charlie Manson in the next video, let me know below in the comments. Number 4, the normalization of violence. They said by being exposed to the violence on a daily basis, it desensitized them. It seemed routine. It seemed inevitable. So if this is going to happen anyways, why am I going to subject myself to harsh punishments if this shit just going to happen anyways? And the last 5, obedience to authority. Many followed orders because of the strong hierarchical structure in Nazi Germany where disobedience was seen as treason. There was a social psychologist by the name of Stanley Milgram who did an experiment later on that demonstrated that individuals are likely to obey authority figures even when it conflicts with their morals. This was a crazy experiment, but for the sake of not making this video so long, I'm going to leave the link in the description if you're interested to see how committing harm to another person will be done if someone higher up is telling you to do it. Now you fully understand how Hitler and the Nazis was able to get ordinary citizens to commit one of the most heinous acts of world history. Now, one of the biggest ways for you moving forward to protect yourself and get your mind back when facing all types of propaganda is to always question the logic that's being fed to you. Always remember that they will always target your emotions. They will never target your logic because it's easier to sway you through your emotions, not through your logic. How do you feel about propaganda? Are you seeing any similarities to this day? Now, if psychological tricks is something that you find value and interest in, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Share the video. Don't keep this information to yourself. This could help a lot of people. Let me know below who should I discuss next, and I'll see you in the next video.